Hello, my fellow strawmen, and welcome back to the Fields of Hay. Today I have a small compilation of theist questions that I wanted to give my input on. First up is a short from Cameron Bertuzzi of the popular channel Capturing Christianity.
So I've got three questions that I want to ask atheists, and these aren't gotcha questions. I sincerely want to know, sincerely want to know the answer to these questions. First question is, do you believe that God does not exist?
I do believe that God does not exist. I also restrict that definition to the concept that whatever fundamentally caused the universe, if that thing is a conscious agent. I found a good rule of thumb to be, if a child asks you why over and over again, and you hit a wall in your ability to explain where something comes from. If that wall is consciously making decisions and issuing commands, then it's God by my definition. I believe that God can't exist based off what I call the argument of ice. I argue that the relationship between information, consciousness, and entropy precludes the idea of a complex thinking agent as the fundamental starting point. If you want more details on that, then go watch my video.
So you kind of either have that belief or you don't. You either believe that God does not exist or you don't. If you answered yes to that, then you're ready for the next question. The next question is, do you believe in evidentialism? Evidentialism is the view that your beliefs ought to be proportioned to the evidence. You shouldn't just believe something without evidence.
Yes, the honest starting point for any hypothetical is that you don't know, and evidence should be used to determine whether it is or isn't true.
Those are the first two questions. You answered yes to both of those. If you have the belief that God does not exist, and you also believe in evidentialism, you're ready for the third question. The third question is, what is your evidence that justifies your belief that God does not exist?
It really is just my argument of ice. Without it, I would consider myself agnostic. In case you're not interested in watching my full video, the basic idea is similar in conception to divine simplicity, just without the divine. I see that as we trace causality, we necessarily go backwards in time and entropy decreases. But this cannot happen without limits, since entropy can't be negative. It must plateau at or before zero, and mathematical symmetry would suggest that it would actually be zero.
If this is in fact a defining feature of the starting point, then any complexity, especially consciousness, could not have existed in that earlier time.
Or even more simply, I could say that I think conscious, intelligent decision making is too complex a function for it to exist uncaused. I don't think it can be a property of whatever fundamentally existent thing ultimately caused our existence. Cameron, if you happen to see this video, I hope you find my answers compelling. Next up, we've got Sean McDowell and what he considers to be the best questions to ask an atheist, like me.
What do you mean by atheism?
I mean that I believe that our universe was not made by an intelligent creator.
When did you become an atheist?
Well, I was born agnostic, like all people who have no opinions on the subject. Then I was raised as a theist, and even though I could parrot the arguments, I never really believed any of them. I really questioned things starting in high school, and gave it up before I went off to college. I never really found my agnosticism satisfying, though, and I would continue to have debates with my family on the topic. It took a while to refine my criticisms into a convincing argument, but when I finally put it all together and realized how strong the argument of ice was, I was no longer undecided. And as an added bonus, I'm also very confident that solipsism and last Thursdayism are bullshit.
Did you ever believe in God?
When I was a child, I told those around me that I believed in God, but looking back, I don't think I ever really believed it deep down.
What's your experience with Christians?
Well, I was raised as a Christian, although I don't know that many would recognize it as such. I'm on good terms with my family, although I've long since moved out. As a whole, though, I think Christians are a mixed bag. Generally, the less they take the Bible literally, the more agreeable I find them. But many of the more literalist Christians I find to be stubborn and closed-minded.
What, if anything, might cause you to reconsider your beliefs?
Really anything that categorically breaks entropy. I could not, within my worldview, explain a brand new bag of Skittles that was perfectly sorted after I shook it. I'm talking about one of the larger bags with several hundred Skittles, not just like 50 of them. If it ever happens and I show the pictures to others to verify I'm not hallucinating, and I eat a few to make sure they haven't been replaced with robots, I'll consider my disbelief in God falsified. For the record, nobody should ever follow me if I ever claim this to happen, because I could be handed $1 million by Big Christian to lie and swing people over. But I'd know if I weren't lying, and I could be convinced.
Those are the kinds of questions I like to begin with. Now, eventually, I want to get to the big question. Why is there something rather than nothing?
I don't know why there would be something rather than nothing. I know that there is something now, and I don't think that it could have come from nothing. So presumably there's always been something. At least with my argument device, I can say that the something that's always been there would be a not God rather than a God.
Where did life come from?
I won't pretend to know all the details, but I find it reasonable to think that there is a natural process which explains its creation from simpler organic molecules. All the requirements we know of were met. There was a source of energy in the form of the sun, which could drive geochemical cycles. Entropy increases when things reproduce because of the energy they spend going about their reproductive cycles. Nothing would appear to break thermodynamics. The fact that I don't know every detail of a process which happened billions of years ago doesn't mean that I should believe a god had to be responsible. It'd be a lot like if I were living in ancient Greece and someone asked me where lightning came from. My not knowing wouldn't be a good reason to believe in Zeus.
The origin of consciousness.
Same answer, but I know even less about its origins. About the only thing I do know about it is that it appears to be an emergent property of sufficiently complex neural systems. Everything we know about consciousness links it to the physical organ of the brain.
Objective moral values and duties.
I don't think objective moral values exist. Subjective morals are made by us humans, and I know of no other kinds.
And who is Jesus?
I think the most likely thing is that he was a faith healer and cult leader whose reports of his death were greatly exaggerated. It's also possible he's entirely mythical. So those are my answers for Sean. One question I'd like to ask back to him is if there is anything that would make him reconsider. He probably won't see this video, but I'd be happy to hear any theist answers in the comments. And to wrap it up, we have a clip from Brian Holdsworth. The broader video I'm pulling from is about what kinds of evidence to expect out of God, and I'll link the video if you want his full take. He doesn't pose a question per se, but it does bring up
a challenge, or maybe even something like a dare,
that alludes to some of the same ideas from Cameron and Sean's questions about evidence and what would convince me. Take it away, Brian.
People who truly and sincerely, with integrity, believe in God usually do so because they've gone through some sort of an experience where they had to admit to themselves that they simply aren't smart enough to riddle out a theory of everything or the singularity behind all that is, which is what you would have to do to have God perfectly proven to you in a rational way.
I would agree that none of us, myself included, are smart enough to riddle everything out. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't at least try to look for evidence. I'm not expecting some absolute proof, just evidence would be thought-provoking, maybe even compelling to me. I'm even willing to accept personal evidence. But if God wants to convince me, then they should know what I will find convincing and meet me where I'm at.
They experience enough of a twinge of humility that they can say something like, God, I don't know if you're out there, but if you are, I think I would like to know you.
I've done this many times. I do it most times a theist brings it up to me, as long as it is practical for me to do it under their variation. I don't know everything, and as much as I may speculate about what the nature of reality is, there is no way I can know for certain. Even with my argument device pointing away from God, the simple fact is that I can be mistaken about the truth of the argument. This is why it is so important for my beliefs to be falsifiable, because then at least there's a chance that I can expose my error and correct myself. So when theists tell me that I need to humble myself and pray to God, you can be sure I'll give it a try. And so after I watched this clip and before I started typing this, I sat in my chair, closed my eyes, and directed my thoughts towards nobody in particular. I just cast them out for any God to listen. I asked them if they were there. I told them that I don't expect them, but I'm willing to believe what is shown to me. I told them that I'm willing to have a relationship, that I didn't believe that they were some evil being for creating the world, and I was more interested in getting to know them before passing judgment. I told them that I'm somebody who tries to convince others that religious faith is inaccurate, but if I'm wrong, then I need to be shown so that I stop leading people away from God. I told them that I didn't know what to expect, that I've had strong feelings before, and it would have to take something unique to make me believe off a feeling. Then I realized I knew exactly what to expect. I thought that when I opened my eyes, my room would be normal. So I asked God if the room could be anything abnormal when I opened them. Not in a coincidental way like a bird got in, but an actual impossible way like one of my books floating. Then I opened my eyes and I looked around. The books were in their usual place. The desk was as cluttered as ever. My cat was sleeping in his usual spot. Nothing. And then I remembered that I have a standard ready to go. I rushed out to my pantry and opened up a bag of Skittles, one of those large bags with hundreds of pieces. To my utter disappointment, they weren't sorted by color. If they had been, I would have immediately stopped believing in entropy. If they had been arranged in a way to spell out the name of a god, I would have immediately started believing in that god. But they weren't, so I went back to my chair. But then I remembered something else. One of the details in my standard is that I'm supposed to shake the bag. I've told people that this is something that would convince me, so, I don't know, maybe somebody could sneak into my apartment and arrange the candy pieces to trick me. I'm supposed to shake the bag because only a god can make them become ordered during the shaking. I forgot to do that step, so I rushed back out, sealed the bag, shook it up, opened it, and of course they were all mixed. Oh well, can't say I didn't try.
And something like that traces my own experience with God. I said something like, God, if you're out there, can you reveal yourself to me in a way that I will understand and be able to appreciate? And he did. I experienced something very personal and very difficult to explain. It would be like trying to explain the color red to somebody who is colorblind.
I suspect that there are some theists that won't take my Skittles thing seriously. But when Brian became convinced, he asked if God could reveal himself in a way that he would be able to understand and to appreciate. The fact is, the more I think about the Skittles example, the more I can appreciate it as something which would utterly convince me. I have a few things I need to check first. I have to shake the bag beforehand, eat some of the Skittles afterward, and take a picture to verify with other people. But if I get through all of that, then the only explanations I'm left with are batshit insane. I don't know what kind of god or aliens I'd believe in, but I sure wouldn't believe the same basic worldview as I currently do. Of course, there's a difference between being able to explain why my experience goes against my worldview, rather than just having it be unexplainable. I don't know what Brian went through, but I suspect that whatever indescribable thing happened, I would have been a lot less likely than him to attribute it to God. So that'll be it for today. Let me know in the comments if you would find the Skittles standard convincing. Am I crazy, or is it an effective way to falsify entropy? Does it make for the kind of personal experience that would make you convinced in a god? And of course, if you haven't today, don't forget to go read a fucking book.